Hi all, this is John from GuidePlanet.com, another quick guide on basic multi-layering techniques in GIMP. What multi-layering means roughly is adding a bunch of layers to make one image. What I'm going to show you how to do today is to use a bunch of layers to make one image where you can see all of the layers right up to the top, even though they're the same size. This is just using techniques by removing certain colors that aren't dominant. First things first, I'll show you how to make a basic sort of shine image, or a top glass layer, so to speak. Start off using paint, just because it's basic and easy. What I'm going to do here is use a beige color. I'm going to fill in a blank. This is just because a beige is a very light color. I could use other light colors, but this will suit the purpose. Save it as JPEG. Base layer. .jpg. Right. So what I'm going to do with that is load that into GIMP, and add first things first, a little border. Just because this is just what I like to do. I add about 3 borders to make a certain effect, and I like it. It works. What I do with the border colors is I don't make them black, so they get slight transparency from each other, but make them a very dark color. So I'll use a dark blue. Yep, make it small. Okay, and it just dumps a little border on top. We'll save this. Export. Save it as base layer.jpg. Place it and export. Okay, so now that I have my base layer, I'm going to colorize it into the shade I want for this glass layer. So colorize, and I've had a blue preset, which is 210 and 100, and this just makes a nice glass look. Okay, and next we're going to remove most of the color, most of the white. This basically makes my glass. There we go. Right, now what I'm going to do is scale the image. I've got all my other textures at one set size, and this will help when I layer them together. Oh, so if I set it to 700 by 360, scale, and override. Well, export. Now that it's changed to transparent, we have to save it as something that can support transparency. So we'll use a PNG. Close it. Alright, now as you can see, I have a glass shiny kind of thing. If there was something behind this, you could see it. Alright, the other textures, I've ripped them from Google Images. I mean, you can probably spend the time, or if you're very creative, you could draw it or paint it or however you like, but what I'm showing here is manipulation of images rather than being the artist yourself. So I've got this layer, which I'm going to use as my backdrop, and I've got this layer, which I'm going to use as a middle layer. Now keep in mind, this is still basic. You could use 10 layers, you could use 20, depending on how many and how advanced you want your image to look in the end. A lot of logos, they use partial images, so they use like a corner for a person or whatever, and it's all the same technique, but it's just different for whatever image you're making. Okay, so first things first, let's load in our base. Now again, I'm going to add a little border in filters, decor, and border. Oh, that's a fuzzy border. Filters, decor, add border, and again I'm going to change it slightly different and slightly bigger. Right, now we've got our border on that. I have to scale it back down to the size that fits the other pictures, which is 700 by 360. Scale. Right, so we've got my backdrop. Next I'm going to make my middle layer out of this. Now normally obviously you couldn't see through this, so a simple solution is to remove one of the primary colors. In this case, if I were to remove the light colors, I'd be left with still not being able to see much of it. So I shall remove the darkest color, which is the black obviously. On different images you'd remove the dominant color, but in this case I think it's black, as you can see. black being a shade, sorry, rather. Anyway, cut this now that we've got our middle layer, and we'll paste it on. Alright, let's export that. Middle layer .png, export. Right, so we've got our layers. Let's get to our base. This is our middle layer now. This is the lowest we have. Obviously, if I was to make this more fancy, I would have added more things behind this other layer, so you could see things behind it. And then when I put this layer on, I'd add more things so you could see things in front of it, and that just adds 3D depth to your image, which is quite handy if you're trying to make something look very sort of professional. The next is obviously adding the glass top layer. Now you can make your glass however you want. You could make any other top layer you wanted, but just to keep things relatively simple, I've just made a basic glass one. Now this is too frosted. You can see this straight away. If I wanted a frosted glass, that would be ideal, but to fix this, quite simply undo it, layers, transparency, and again remove the most dominant color, which is clearly white. I could sit there picking out all the colors, but it would be pointless. I could just do this. So okay, and then edit and cut. Now that I've got that, paste it back on, and you can see it's more of a sort of glass shimmer layer on top of it. You can do lots more, but just for the demonstration purposes, this is the earth that I used. I ripped from Google Images, and I used in the last logo demonstration, just to show you how a logo would look on top. Scale it down, 300 by 300, scale, edit and cut. So I go edit, paste, and your logo would sit bang in the middle. As I said, a lot of professional business images, they use like pictures that are just corners in one of their layers. For example, some people standing there, or whatever your product or whatever is. But that's just the idea. You get it now. This is multi-layering with GIMP. Right. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to post on guideplanet.com.